Under biodiversity offsetting, you will likely be told, okay, you can do your airport, but you need to recreate a habitat for flamingos within 10 kilometers. Now, what is to come is an extreme form of biodiversity offsetting that is in fact much worse, where you would likely be told, okay, you can do your airport, but you need to compensate somewhere in the world, not necessarily in the same country, and not necessarily by restoring the same habitat, the same type of habitat than the one that was destroyed, but it can be another habitat. So in theory, you could restore a habitat for bats in India and claim that you have compensated for the destruction of flamingos in Spain. And so in this way, it is very similar to carbon offsetting, but it's much worse because when it comes to carbon offsetting, right, you deal with 6 main greenhouse gases, right, that are where you have more or less workable equivalencies. Here, you are trying to simplify millions of species with a complex web of interdependencies into a few liquid tradable assets. So obviously that creates many issues. First of all, we do not know the full biodiversity very well. Our scientific discoveries, we're just scratching the surface. And yet, if you want to create a market on it, if you want to put a price on the destruction of nature, you should, at the very least, as a prerequisite, understand, have a complete understanding of all the species and their interactions, which is absolutely not the case. And we are also, in many cases, unable to recreate what was destroyed simply because, again, the science of restoration is in its infancy. And it's extremely complicated and costly to do it. And it's also important to remember that at best, if offsetting worked, it would merely displace destruction, right? It would not reduce destruction. It would not compensate for past destruction. It would enable future destruction by claiming that you can compensate for it. And like I said earlier, the other issue is that it requires oversimplifying and standardizing nature to make it fit into a handful of financial instruments in order to have a financial market. Obviously, there is no environmental integrity in that. We cannot do such a standardization process and have something that merely has any conservation value. And also, crucially, by creating these markets, we are doing a massive sovereignty transfer from governments who are democratically elected to private financial markets who are only concerned by definition by private financial gains. And that's a big problem because the priorities of the financial markets, for example, the ecosystem service, that the species and the habitat that they may want to favor may be very different from the ecological priorities. And so we would be giving up our power and our sovereignty to these actors who have no accountability.